So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spike Knight, and in these podcasts I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, and I'm very excited about this, in today's podcast, I am reviewing The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. But, just before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers, but prefer to listen to your podcast on Spotify, well, even look, as you can also listen to this podcast on Spotify at Night of the Movies on that platform, and if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually. Yes, you can watch this podcast on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you enjoy the podcast, if you enjoy the podcast, of course, then we don't really know what happened there. And please leave me with some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there are always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it, shall we? The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. And just before I get into my thoughts on this film, I should once again say that I've never read any of the Lord of the Rings books. So apologies if I get some of the details and some of the names wrong in these podcasts, in this podcast today specifically, because I am not great on the details with these films. That being said, I just absolutely love them, and I love The Return of the King. I adore it to pieces. It is the greatest finale in cinematic history, and it makes the Lord of the Rings trilogy the best trilogy of all time. It just does. I love the original Star Wars trilogy, and I love Return of the Jedi, but Return of the King is better. It's such an amazing film, and you can feel all the passion, love, time and care that was put into this trilogy, and all that comes together with Return of the King. When you feel it just come off the screen in the best way possible, you feel the passion that has gone into this trilogy, and you really feel that with Return of the King. And the whole film feels like this symphony with all these different movements building up to this finale in the film, in the third act, which delivers. This film had so much potential with Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers, and it delivers on all that potential. It delivers and more. It is simply the greatest finale ever. To anything, to any movie, to any TV show, it's completely unrivaled, and if you hadn't got this already, absolutely love it! I love this film so much. God, I love it, and I love the extended edition. The extended edition is the definitive edition when it comes to this film, particularly. I mean, it is with Two Towers, and it is with Fellowship of the Ring as well. But with this film, the extended edition really adds so much more to the movie, which I'll go on to later on in this podcast. And it really makes it into an experience. And I always say that the best films feel like an experience. And Return of the King, although the extended edition is like 4 hours and 23 minutes long, the credits are about 23 minutes long, so really it's 4 hours long, because in the credits for the extended editions you put everybody who contribute to the film via the OneRing.net into the credits, so the credits last for about 20 minutes themselves. So really the extended edition for this film was actually 4 hours long, even though it is that long. And even so, at times it does feel that long. It just adds to the experience of the film, and it gives you a far more richer experience, and it really provides a satisfying conclusion with all the extended editions. You know, I was shocked when I first heard this, that in the original cut of The Return of the King, you don't see Saruman's death. When I heard that for the first time a couple of years back, I literally sat in my bed back there and was just thinking, so many people probably haven't seen Saruman's death then. Because I know a lot of people who just watched the original cuts of Return, or of the Lord of the Rings films in general, and when I said, oh yeah, there's extended editions, like, what? They didn't realise it. And Saruman's death is one of the most memorable parts of the films, in my opinion. And I grew up watching the extended editions. So, you know, that's the editions, those are the editions of the films I've known. But the thing is, the more I hear about the original cut of Return of the King, even though it was the cut of Return of the King that did win 11 Oscars, it swept the board at the Academy Awards that year in 2004, must have been. It swept the board at the Academy Awards and it won all the Academy Awards that it was nominated for. Even though the original cut did win 11 Oscars, I can't imagine myself ever watching the original cut of this film. Because I've heard about all the changes that the original... I've heard about all the scenes that are in the extended edition and are not in the original cut. And in the original version of the film, it frustrates me thinking about what's not in the original film. I dare say the original film is tighter, maybe a little bit tighter, maybe it's a little bit more fun to watch if you're not into watching super long movies. But if you are into the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and if you're a fan, and if you haven't seen the extended editions, check them out. I think you can rent them on Amazon Prime, or I think you can rent the extended editions on Amazon Prime, or just buy them on DVD, because then they're in your possession, and you can check out all the special features too. And the special features really show the amount of work and time and effort and passion that went into making these films. And that's something I've never seen with any other movie production. I've never seen a movie production like this before. When you're watching the special features, it's like one community was making this film. Was making all three films, sorry, should I say. It's like one community was making these three films. And it's really astounding to watch. And you feel that, you know. I love all the fantasy elements of these Lord of the Rings films. I really do. Even though I might get some of the details wrong, when I talk about these films on these podcasts, I love all the details. I love all the fantasy stuff. But what really impresses me more than anything, particularly as I've grown to learn about cinema over time as I started this channel, is the filmmaking behind this film, and the filmmaking that we see on screen throughout this film and throughout the Lord of the Rings trilogy as a whole, which is something where they were pushing the boundaries. They were doing something different that hadn't been done in cinema before. They were creating proper high fantasy films that had this high quality to them. They weren't mucking about. They weren't just saying, oh, we can fix this as an edit. They were taking time and were really putting all they had, putting their blood, sweat and tears into making these movies. And you can say that about any film, that they put their blood, sweat and tears into it. You can say that about any film. But with the Lord of the Rings trilogy specifically, you really, really feel that. And when you watch the special features, it's fascinating and it's enthralling because you can see that work. You can see the passion that's put into it. And someone like me, who's a film buff, who's really into the behind the scenes stuff and who hasn't actually watched behind the scenes stuff beforehand, even though I've had the extended edition DVDs in my house for the longest time, I am watching I'm watching all the special edition stuff, and I cannot believe what I'm seeing. I mean, in the best way possible. It's really something special. And if you're a fan of these films, and if you're a fan of Return of the King in particular, check out the extended edition and the special features. That's what I meant to say there. Check out the extended edition and the special features. Also, I haven't said already, I'm wearing the ring today because, well, I wasn't sure if I was going to wear it in this podcast. I wore this ring in my View of Two Towers. I didn't wear it in my View of Fellowship of the Ring because it's not my ring, it's my brother's ring. I bought it for Christmas. But when I went to go and buy them for myself after Christmas, they were all sold out, so I bought this cheaper version of the One Ring for myself. It's not as good because I've got a big head and this doesn't fit around my head, but this one does fit around my head, although it's not mine, it's my brother's, but he did lend it to me for this podcast. Because this film means so much to me. It really is one of the most emotionally engaging and exhilarating and exciting films I have ever seen. every single time I watch Return of the King, even though I know what's going to happen, I know where it's going, and I've seen this film about 500 times, and that is not an exaggeration. Even though I've seen this film so many times, I still finish this film feeling emotionally broken. I don't usually cry at movies. It's just something that I don't do. It's just something about me. I wish I did. I wish I cried at movies more. And I love when people do cry at films. But for me, it's just never really happened that much. Whenever I finish Return of the King, I want to break down in tears, though. I don't, because for some reason I just don't cry that much, but I want to break down in tears. It makes me well up like no other film does. Not even Star Wars. And again, I'm a huge Star Wars fan if you don't know. Look behind me, look at the t-shirt I'm wearing in this podcast today. I'm a very big Star Wars fan. But nothing in Star Wars has made me want to well up. Except one scene in the sequel trilogy. Yes, in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, one scene did make me well up. I'm not going to get into which scene today. That's another topic for another day. But nothing has made me well up in the Star Wars franchise as much as the last half an hour, as much as so many moments in this film, actually. I mean, not just the last half an hour, Return of the King, but the lighting of the beacons. It's a sequence in the film which doesn't have any dialogue, does it? Until, you know, Aragorn says to King Theoden, Gondor course raid. And then King Theoden says, and Rohan shall answer. Ooh, just chills thinking about it now. That gives me goosebumps. Everything about these films gives me goosebumps. I can't even speak. Everything about these films gives me goosebumps, by the way. I'm not sure I ever said that in my view of Fellowship or Two Towers, but everything about these films gives me goosebumps, and particularly Return of the King, and that whole lighting of the beacon sequence, where you see all these vast landscapes in New Zealand, beautifully captured by Peter Jackson and his crew. Peter Jackson, if you don't know, is a director. So many of you didn't know that already. I'd be very surprised. And the way that Peter Jackson and his crew capture all these New Zealand landscapes, these landscapes which look like something out of a fairy tale, with the Howard Shore music roaring in the background, you know, bam, ba 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 bam, 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 ba da dum, bam. The way that plays, I'm getting a bit emotional. I'm getting very emotional actually thinking about it now. It's making me tear up a little, because that, for me, is one of the best moments in cinema history. When that happened, I still remember watching it for the first time and getting really sad and emotional, because that was when it was starting to hit me. It hit me at the end of Two Towers, when Gandalf shows up at the Battle of Helm's Deep. That always hits me in the feels, but it really hits me in the feels when we get to the lighting of the beacons and Return of the King, and the music perfectly marries up to the visuals and everything starts to come together. And then the last hour of the film, I know everybody likes to be smart and funny and complain about, you know, try to be smart and funny. They not actually are when they say this, but I know everybody likes to make fun of Return of the King's 15 endings. I love every one of them, though. I don't care that this film has 15 drawn-out endings, because they all feel earned. And you know what? I would rather the 15 drawn-out endings Return of the King than the 30 bloody rushed endings of Game of Flipping Thrones. Game of Thrones had such a disappointing ending, because each character fate was rushed and annoying. And the reason I'm comparing to Game of Thrones, by the way, is because it was something which a lot of people compared to Lord of the Rings when Game of Thrones was there, didn't it? I think a lot of people compared Game of Thrones to Lord of the Rings, and everyone was hoping for this grand finale, and it fizzled out in the most underwhelming and disappointing and lackluster way possible. Whilst Return of the King, yes, it has 15 endings that are all drawn out, maybe a little too much, but I love them all because they feel earned. It feels, you know, you follow these characters for so long, especially if you watch the extended editions, you follow them for about, I don't know, 11 hours up to this point, maybe 11 hours and a half. And if you watch the original cuts, you follow them up from like, what, if I think of my maths correctly, and I'm not great with maths, something like 8 hours. You know, you're following these characters for so long, and you want them to have a satisfying, conclusive end. So when, yes, you see, you know, the hobbits return to the Shire, you see Sam get married, and you have this long goodbye with the hobbits when Frodo goes off to the Grey Havens. Yes, it's all a little drawn out, but none of that bothers me. It doesn't bother me at all, because it feels earned, and there's this emotional through line going on throughout each ending, and you want to see where these characters end up. You want to see that you want to see what happens to them when the evil of Middle-earth has been defeated. You want to see where they end up, and where Frodo ends up, and when he says goodbye to Sam, it always gets me. Always gets me. And he gives that one last look to the hobbits, to Sam, Merry and Pippin, as he gets on the boat to go to the Grey Havens. And God, I love that moment. I love it, and it's so emotional. And then you get Annie Lennox's Into the West in the credits, and it's just perfect. It really is just perfect when Into the West plays, and again, it just leaves you emotionally broken, but in the right way, in the best way possible, as the end of a trilogy should do. You know, you feel sad by the end of the trilogy, but you're so glad that it happened. I remember the first time I really sat down to watch this trilogy is after I saw the second Hobbit movie. I was really, utterly, emotionally just drained, you know, after finishing Return of the King for the first time. And I remember, because me and my family watched these films around New Year every year, it's an annual tradition. I remember counting down the days till the next New Year, not only to see the third Hobbit movie, but also to see the Lord of the Rings trilogy again, because it makes them rewatchable, because you know that these films have a definitive and conclusive end. It's not like you're sitting there watching Fellowship of the Ring and Two Towers thinking, well, Return of the King is quite disappointing. You do feel that. I know some people, I've watched some people online, should I say, I don't actually know them, but I've seen some people online who say they watched the original two Star Wars movies, A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and they're disappointed by Return of the King. I know people who I see people online who talk about many trilogies, like even the Dark Knight trilogy. I love the Dark Knight trilogy, but I know people who are disappointed by Dark Knight Rises. I see people online who talk about their disappointment with Godfather Part 3. I mean, I know that's a different type of trilogy, but it's still a trilogy. There's many examples like that where people talk about how much they love the first two films of a trilogy and they're disappointed by the third. Return of the King, I haven't heard anyone being disappointed by this film. And if you are, I don't know what you're expecting. I mean, this film delivers on all of its promises, literally from the opening, where you see how Smeagol became Gollum. I love the way this film opens. I mean, just from the opening seconds where you see the New Line Cinema logo, you get the Howard Shore score, you know, da 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 da. I did a very bad rendition of it there, but you get the Howard Shore score, you know, coming in the opening credits, and it's setting the scene, and you're thinking, well, that's a bit different, because the opening music to Two Towers is quite dark, it's quite serious, and it sets the tone for the opening of Two Towers when you see Gandalf facing off against the Balrog. And in this film, the opening music is quite sweet. It's almost like you could play it alongside reading a book, a storybook, a fairy tale even. You know, you could play the music in a meadow. It's that sort of music. And then you see this shot which is beautiful, where you see Smeagol and his friend, I forgot the name of his friend, it's off the top of my head right now, but you see them on the boat together, and there's a shot full of all these lush green colours, and it looks gorgeous. And then as Smeagol and his friend find the ring, and by the way, side note here, but it's not really a side note actually, it's very important to the scene. I love that we got to see the real Andy Serkis in this scene, because Andy Serkis played Gollum, you know, in Two Towers, and he plays Gollum again in this film, but you wouldn't be able to tell it's Andy Serkis if you didn't know it. Side note here, I almost forgot to get this out. Me and my brother met Andy Serkis at Star Celebration. The photo's a little dusty now, but still, I wanted to show you that because I was so excited when I met him, because how much I love him in this trilogy, and also the first Hobbit film. And, you know, you don't get to see Andy Serkis in his human form in the Two Towers, but you do get to see him in his human form at the start of Return of the King. And he plays it so well. When you see, you know, Smeagol, aka Gollum, happy, you're like, oh my god, that's what it used to be like. And I like how Peter Jackson introduces the film that way. He gives you a prologue to who Gollum used to be. It's a prologue to Gollum, who is arguably one of, if not the most important character in these films, when you really think about it. I love how he's definitely one of the most important characters. Yeah, it definitely is. I love how Peter Jackson introduces the film that way, and it introduces the film in a light-hearted way, you know. And it gives you that feeling that this film is probably going to end with everyone being happy, and it does. It ends in quite a happy way. There's not really a sad ending in the film. I mean, there is a sad ending, but it's also a sad ending. It's bittersweet. It's a bittersweet ending, this film has. And the opening sets it up really well. And then, as I was saying before, as Smeagol and his friend find the One Ring, the tone of the scene completely changes. It completely changes, and Peter Jackson's horror roots start to come through. You know, Peter Jackson, before he did the Lord of the Rings trilogy, he worked on such horror films as The Frighteners with Michael J. Fox. He also made Brain Dead, Meet the Feebles as another one, which I can't think off the top of my head right now. But yeah, he made some horror movies back way before he did Lord of the Rings. That's how he started his filmmaking career. And you start to see Peter Jackson's horror roots come through as you see Smeagol become Gollum and become obsessed and possessed by the One Ring. And I love all that stuff. I love how he opens the film that way. I love how the film doesn't just open with a big action set piece. Not to say that would have been bad. Two Towers, when you think about it, opens with a big action set piece of Gandalf against a Balrog, and Fellowship of the Ring kind of does too with the whole prologue stuff. But I love how this film, you know, it starts off like a symphony with a slow movement that builds up. I mean, it's not really a slow movement, but it's a movement which captures your attention and engages you and shows you a different side to Gollum, this character that you love to hate in Two Towers and that you love to hate even more in this film. And it shows you a different side to him, adding more complexity to that character. And it's something, I'm really fleshing out the character, and it's something I think Peter Jackson and his crew did remarkably well. And I heard somewhere, I don't know how true it is because I heard it online, and don't always trust everything you see online. I heard somewhere that apparently the whole flashback sequence with Smeagol turning to Gollum was meant to be in Two Towers, but they decided to put it in Return of the King. I think it was a far better decision to put it in Return of the King, because it makes, like I said before, it opens with this sweet scene and it sets up the end of the film. You know? If you follow my thinking there, I'm not sure if you will. But anyway, I love the opening sequence of this film so much. And then, if I remember correctly, and I might not because it's been a couple of days since I've seen Return of the King and I've slept since then, I don't remember every single moment of it, but if I remember correctly, we cut to King Theoden, Aragorn, Gandalf the White, Legolas and Gimli all riding to Isengard, where they are reunited with Merry and Pippin. And Treebeard is there too. I think Treebeard is on the extended edition. And this is when you get to see Saruman's death. And again, this is only an extended edition, you know. This is only in the extended version of Return of the King. And I love Saruman's death. I love it. It's a death which, you know, I've heard some Lord of the Rings fans were disappointed by Saruman's death. For me, it makes complete sense that Saruman, this menacing and evil wizard from the first two Lord of the Rings films, dies in such a way where he basically dies at the hands of his own craft. He dies in Isengard by something he created, you know? And I love how Wormtongue stabs him, and then Legolas shoots Wormtongue with an arrow, and then the way you see Saruman fall from the Tower of Isengard, I don't think it's called that, but when you see Saruman fall from the Tower of Isengard in a shot that mirrors another shot where the camera's tracking down Isengard, the Tower of Isengard from the Fellowship of the Ring, I love how that's done. I love that scene, although the opening scene doesn't cut to that. No, it cuts to the opening scene where Smeagol turns to Gollum cuts to Frodo, Sam and Gollum in quote-unquote present day of the film, and then you get that scene with Saruman dying. Yeah, I got the scenes a bit mixed up there, but I love all that opening. Then the film cuts to Edoras and Rohan. Edoras is the capital of Rohan, and from then onwards the film builds with all these different movements and up to this finale. It's so well crafted. The way we see Merry and Pippin separate at one point because Gandalf the White realises that the Orcs and Sauron are after Pippin because they think he's the Hobbit with the ring. I love that, how Pippin and Merry play very big parts in the film, particularly Pippin, and I love how those two are separated. I love the scene when they separate. It's a very emotional scene because you see how Merry and Pippin have this brotherly bond, and Merry, when he sees Pippin riding away with Gandalf, he says something like, "We've always been close, even before we were twins." That line, it's something like that, but that line always hits me like, even before we were twins. I was always getting him into trouble. I was always saving him as well. He says something on those lines, and then you see later on in the film that Pippin actually finds Merry after the battle of Minas Tirith. You see that he finds him in Pelennor Fields, and he takes care of him. So there's all that character development going on there. That Merry was meant to be the one looking after Pippin before, and now later on in this film, Pippin looks after Merry. So I love that scene when they separate, because it's heartbreaking. But there's that moment where Merry talks about his relationship with Pippin, and it fills you with. It's heartwarming at the same time, And then you get the introduction to Minas Tirith, and you think, well, okay, the world building in this film can't get any better. You had Helm's Deep and Two Towers, you had the Mines of Moria in Fellowship of the Ring, the forest where Boromir died in Fellowship of the Ring. You had all this expansive, you had the Shire in Fellowship of the Ring, and Two Towers, what I said. You got Helm's Deep, you had Rohan, Osgiliath, and all this stuff in Two Towers. Two Towers is great, and Fangorn Forest too. It's great at world building, and you think there can't be any better world building to be done. We introduced into Minas Tirith in this film, and the way Minas Tirith is introduced on this one, huge, wide master shot of Minas Tirith, of Gandalf the White riding on his horse. What's his horse called? Shadowfax. I'm starting to get some of the details correct here. When you see him riding his horse with Pippin, and that one wide shot introduces Minas Tirith, it still takes my breath away. The way Minas Tirith is introduced, and the way you see Gandalf riding up it. And it was all just a set. It still astounds me that the castles in these films are sets. Helm's Deep was a set, and Minas Tirith is a set. And then we're introduced to Denethor, who, well, if you didn't watch the extended edition of Two Towers, this is your first introduction to Denethor. If you watch the extended edition of Two Towers, which is the definitive edition of that film, if you watch the extended edition of Two Towers, Denethor, who is Boromir and Faramir's father, does make an appearance in that film. But here, he's back, and this is quote-unquote present day, the Two Towers flashback in the extended edition. That's a flashback, that's not taking place. That's before Boromir went to go and join the Fellowship, when we first see Denethor in the extended edition of Two Towers. In Return of the King, we meet Denethor in present day, if you feel my thinking there. So for some people this might be the first introduction to Denethor, for some people this might not be. John Noble plays him really well as this kind of manipulative, sleazy scumbag of somebody who's running Minas Tirith and who had a favourite son. And the way he sees relationship with Faramir later on in the film. John Noble plays him well because, again, much like Gollum, it's one of those characters you love to hate. It's a very compelling character, and I think a lot of that is down to John Noble's performance as Denethor. So I love that. And then we see the invasion of Osgiliath. I love how that's done. Again, it's building up, and they get this moments of action in there, and it's like a movement that's exciting. Again, it's like a symphony, and then they go back to Minas Tirith, and Faramir meets Gandalf the White and Pippin, and he sees Pippin, he's looking at Pippin a bit unusually, like, and Pippin's like, oh, why are you looking at me weirdly? He doesn't say that, but he gives him a look like, why are you looking at me like this? Gandalf says, this is not the first Hobbit you've seen. It's something like that, and Faramir goes, no, and then Pippin goes, Frodo and Sam, he gets really excited. I love how the Hobbits get excited whenever they hear about each other. Just another reason I love Hobbits, and I want to be a Hobbit myself. And then Gandalf gets Pippin to light the beacons of Gondor, to light the beacon of Gondor, and they get Gondor calls for aid, and Rohan shall answer, and the whole lighting the beacon sequence I've already spoken about, just perfect. And then you see the armies of Rohan start their trek, start their march to Gondor, to Minas Tirith. And then you see Arwen's vision of the future, where her and Aragorn have a son, which I really like. I'm not sure if that's in the original cut or not. I haven't looked that up. When I looked at what was in the original cut and what wasn't, this scene didn't say it wasn't in the original cut. Although I spoke to my mum, who did see the original cut when it came out in cinemas in 2003. I wish I was there, by the way. And she said that the scene where Arwen has a vision into the future and sees that her and Aragorn have a son wasn't completely in the original cut. Like, they extended it. I think that scene... I love that scene because it sort of shows you a glimpse of the future without actually doing a flash forward, It shows you what the future of Arwen and Aragorn is going to be like without jumping ahead. You can, just like that, after this film's finished, you can think, oh yeah, Aragorn and Arwen, they had a kid, and they must have had a happy life, And I love how that vision is incorporated into the film, and then Arwen decides to go back on her father's orders, on Elrond's orders, and decides that she wants to marry Aragorn. I love that she got that moment where she decides what she wants to do, because as I said before, she was meant to be in the Battle of Helm's Deep, and I love the Battle of Helm's Deep. I think it's one of the best battles, if not the best battle, in cinematic history. I just would have liked to see Arwen included, especially as it was meant to be. If you look up unreleased footage from the Lord of the Rings trilogy online, you'll see that she was meant to be there. She was meant to be in that battle, and she has more of a role and has a little bit more agency in this film. And yeah, I like that she decides her own fate. She decides to go and marry Aragorn. Then you see the Orcs and the Witch King leading the Orcs, marching forth on Minas Tirith. And then you also introduce, and then you get Gollum leading Sam and Frodo to Shelob. Actually, he just leads Frodo to Shelob, doesn't he? He doesn't lead Sam and Frodo, because Sam and Frodo have that little falling out, which is always a heartbreaking scene to watch. Even though at the end of the day Sam goes and saves Frodo, it's still a heartbreaking scene watching it, where you see this bond that has formed between those two characters from Fellowship, the bond they had in Fellowship, and how it's grown over the one time of Fellowship through to 2000, through to this point with Return of the King. And you see them have that argument, and it's always heartbreaking. And the way Gollum is being this manipulative, I can't speak. The way Gollum is being this manipulative, conniving, the way Gollum is being this manipulative, conniving person, trying to take down Sam, trying to get Frodo to hate Sam. I love all that stuff, and then it leads into Shelob and sequences which still give me the chills now, in the way they should do, getting back to Peter Jackson's whole route. And then the battle beginning on Middle Earth. You see the battle beginning at Minas Tirith. I love the way everything looks at Minas Tirith. It looks surreal. It looks like something out of a fairy tale. There's this look with this film when you see all these colours. You see the colours starting to come through, and visually it's one of the best looking films I have seen ever. It simply is, extraordinary. It simply has extraordinary visuals. It really is something special the way this film is shot. And then you see Denethor, the father of Boromir and Faramir, thinking that Faramir is dead, except he is not, but he wants to burn Faramir alive. And I love all that storyline. And they get Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli meeting with the dead men of Dunharrow and King of the Dead. I had to look at my notes there to get those details right. But I love all the stuff with the dead army, and then King Theoden's speech and the ride of the Rohirim. One of the best moments ever in any film, when you get King Theoden's speech at the Battle of Minas Tirith. King Theoden's speech is one of those moments where it's like everything with the armies of Rohan has been leading to this, and you really feel that. And the way Peter Jackson directs that scene, the way that scene is staged, the way that scene looks, again with the visuals and with the light coming from the armies of Rohan, you know, in the background, everywhere else the light is dark and you can see it towering over, and you can see the light is grey, you know, in the clouds, and then with the armies of Rohan, no, it's light and it's there. You can see that they are going to bring, well, I don't even know what's going on now, but you get the point I'm making. You see the light behind the armies of Rohan, and King Theoden's speech, and the way Howard Shore's musical score is, and that whole thing where you see the armies of the whole sequence where you see the armies of Rohan riding to fight the Orcs at the Battle of Minas Tirith is absolutely perfect. It really is. There's nothing else like it in cinema. There's nothing else like that speech and the ride of the Rohirim. It's really something else, and that scene, every time I watch it, it always catches me off guard about how emotional it actually is. Because when I was rewatching it the other day, I was like, this isn't. It's not going to be, you know, it's not going to be as nearly as uplifting and as emotional and as emotionally riveting as I found it in the past, and as I found it in the cinema. And I was watching this film at 4 AM last year in the cinema. No, it was even more so. It's even more emotionally riveting than when I saw this film in the cinema. And you get the ride of the Rohirrim, and then as all the armies of Rohan get into battle, the Oliphants come in, the Mummakill, I think that's what they're called, at least that's what the musical track is called, that's what the track's called on Spotify for when the Oliphants come into the Battle of Minas Tirith. And at the same time though, Pippin is telling Gandalf that Denethor is going to kill his son, Faramir, even though Faramir is still alive. And in the extended edition, apparently, I didn't even realise it was only in the extended edition, you have Gandalf riding to go and save Faramir, and then he faces off against the Witch King in a great moment that shows the power of Gandalf, and it's a moment which is so well done. You know, something I really love about the battle sequence in this film, the Battle of Minas Tirith, is how it's organised chaos. You know, you see all the battle sequence is very chaotic, and you see things falling, parts of Minas Tirith are falling down, there's soldiers which are scared, there's orcs killing all these soldiers, and they're trying to get into Minas Tirith, and there's trolls and all that stuff. But at the same time, it's still organised, you know? You still are following the characters, and you still have a sense of what's going on. You know, it's cohesive. That's what I'm trying to say. It's cohesive. None of it is too confusing that you don't know who to follow anymore. You're still following the characters you've been aligned with beforehand. And what is so great about the Battle of Minas Tirith is that, yes, it is chaotic, and you feel that. You feel that they're under siege here. Gondor is under siege, and the men of Gondor are trying their best to hold the Orcs back. But there's still cohesion there. There's Peter Jackson and his team and the filmmakers behind this film, they made all the battle sequence feel cohesive. And I love that about it. And yeah, you see Denethor, he's about to kill Faramir, then Gandalf rides in, stops Faramir from dying, and Denethor, who's burning alive, runs through Minas Tirith and jumps off the top of Minas Tirith. I'm not explaining it well, but if you've seen the film, you know exactly what shot I'm talking about. The way that's, I mean, one of the best shots ever, where you see Denethor jump off Minas Tirith, and he's burning alive, and he jumps into the battle. That shot still, I'm flabbergasted by it now. I don't know how they did that, because, well, I just don't know how they did it. In between all this battle, in between the Orcs taking down Minas Tirith, and in between the people of Gondor getting very scared for their safety as the Orcs are starting to breach Minas Tirith, you get this speech that Gandalf makes to Pippin about the afterlife. And it's a speech which is in the middle of all this chaos. It's in the middle of death happening all around Pippin and Gandalf, and he makes this speech about what happens in the afterlife. And it's a speech which, it shouldn't work in that scene. It shouldn't work at all, but it works perfectly, you know. And I mean, I don't have any more to say about that moment of the film, but it's something which I always forget about every time I rewatch it. It's always a moment which really gets me in the feels, as so much of this film does. And then, at the same time, though, on the battlefield, you got Eowyn facing off against the Witch King, and the Witch King's like, "No man can kill me," he says something like that, and then Eowyn stands up and go, takes the helmet off and says, "I am no man." Oh, such a good moment, and gives me chills now. I mean, there's so many moments like that in the film. I could just go on and on and on. I am going to, Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli showing up at the battle, and with the dead army, and Legolas single-handedly taking down the Oliphant. One of the most amazing visual effects sequences I've seen ever. I don't know how they did that, with the way you see Orlando Bloom's face as well when he gets on top of the Oliphant. It's like, what? How did they make the sequence work? It wasn't just CGI. I don't know how they did that whole visual effects sequence where Legolas has taken down the Oliphant, and then Gimli says that still only counts as one, and one of the best lines in this film, brilliantly delivered by John Rhys Davies. Then you have Sam saving Frodo from Shelob, and I love all the Shelob stuff. I really love it. Eowyn recovering alongside Faramir after all that, after the battle is done, and that is only in the extended edition. I can't believe all the stuff with Eowyn and Faramir isn't really in the original cut. From what I've heard, there's one shot that implies they got together, that they got married in the original cut, but you actually get to see their relationship start to form and them start to connect in the extended edition, and I think that's very important. And then after all that, you get another battle. After the Battle of Minas Tirith, which is arguably better than the Battle of Helm's Deep. Personally, I probably prefer the Battle of Minas Tirith just because I love the Oliphant so much, but I think the Battle of Helm's Deep is still extraordinary. Nevertheless, after all that, you get the Battle of the Black Gate, and Sam and Frodo are almost at Mount Doom. They're getting ready to destroy the ring, and what is the line that Sam says? Now I have to get this verbatim, I have to get this quote right. That's it, Sam says this, I had to get this quote word for word because it's such a brilliant quote. "I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you." When Frodo is struggling to take the ring to Mount Doom and destroy it, Sam says, "I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you." One of the best quotes in all these films. And then, just before Frodo is about to destroy the ring, Gollum comes in, and Gollum takes the ring, and Gollum dies with the ring. It's one of the best moments. Gollum, his obsession was a thing that killed him. I love that. I love how intense all the stuff that Gollum gets towards the end. And I love how much you hate Gollum in those moments leading up to the destruction of the One Ring, to the destruction of Mount Doom. The way Andy Serkis plays Gollum in Gollum's last few sequences in this film is some of the best acting I've seen. The fact that it's all motion capture works again, and he brings so much life to it. God, it's perfect. And then Mount Doom is destroyed. The Orcs all desert the battle at the Black Gate. And then you think that Frodo and Sam are going to die, though. But then the Eagles save them. And it makes sense why the Eagles save them, by the way. I don't care anyone says it makes sense why the Eagles save them. Because at that point, the evil is being taken away from Middle-earth. And the Eagles, I always think beforehand the Eagles couldn't go to Mount Doom because of all the evil that was there, all the Nazgul and the Ringwraiths. They couldn't go there because the Ringwraiths would have taken them down. But the Eagles can go to Mount Doom now and save Sam and Frodo because they've destroyed the evil. They've destroyed the One Ring. That's why I think the Eagles can go there. And it makes sense. The people say, why? But, why couldn't they take the Eagles to Mordor initially? First of all, it's not good storytelling, and it wouldn't make these films any interesting. It'd be a pretty boring film, a pretty boring story in general if they just took the ring there on the Eagles in the first place. But also, it makes sense because Mount Doom is being destroyed, the evil is deserting, it is going away in Middle-earth, and then fine, that's why the Eagles can go there. That's why the Eagles can go and save Sam and Frodo. So I love that. I don't care what anyone says. I love the fact that the Eagles come back in this film. And then got it mixed up. Frodo wakes up in the bed after being saved from the Eagles, and he sees all the Fellowship reunited. And I love how the theme for the Fellowship, how it shows a musical motif for the Fellowship of the Ring, bom, bom, ba-da-dum, 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 bum, 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 ba-da-dum. You only really get it at its fullest when the Fellowship are all together. You get it quite a few times in Fellowship of the Ring when the Fellowship are all together, and then you get it when the Fellowship are all reunited when Frodo wakes up in bed and Gandalf is laughing, and the scene shouldn't work. And to be honest, if it was in any other film, it wouldn't work. But it does work. It works so well. And the funny thing was, when I was watching this in the cinema, full of people who were clearly fans of these films and clearly watched them multiple times. I mean, there was a lot of people quoting parts of Fellowship of the Ring and parts of Return of the King and even parts of Two Towers, now that I think about it. When I was watching this in the cinema, there was people laughing during that sequence because it is a bit goofy. I mean, I don't know if goofy is the right word, but it is a bit of a silly scene when Frodo's waking up with the Fellowship are all reunited and they're all laughing like, hey, yeah, and, they're not saying anything. At least we don't hear them saying anything. We just hear the music, da-da-da, ba-da-da, da-dum, dum, bum, bum, ba-da-dum. One of the most beautiful pieces of music I have heard in anything. Howard Shaw did an extraordinary job with the musical scores for these films. People are laughing at it in the cinema. It's a scene where it doesn't really work, but it does. It does. It makes you smile, and it really makes your heart warm. And then you cut to the crowning of Aragorn as the King of Gondor, and you see everybody bow to him, and you see the hobbits bow to him, and he says to the hobbits, "My friends, you bow to no one." And the way Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn says that line, he sounds a bit like the feels are getting to him, he sounds a bit like he's starting to choke up. That's what I was trying to say. He sounds like he's starting to choke up in that moment, and it's one of the most powerful moments I've seen in any film. There's so many moments like that, but that bit when you like, "My friends, you bow to no one." It's getting me a bit now, actually. And then we go back to the Shire. I know when we go back to the Shire, we see that same grumpy old hobbit from the Fellowship of the Ring back here. Peter Jackson made this as a trilogy. Peter Jackson and his crew in New Zealand made this as a trilogy, and you can tell that there's things that said in the first film that are come back to fruition in this film, like the old grumpy hobbit being there again, being back in the Shire and seeing Frodo, Sam, Merry and Pippin all ride through the Shire again after they've been through hell, quite literally. And then you see Sam marry the girl of his dreams in a sequence which you just can't help but smile at. You really just can't help but smile at. And then Frodo he finishes his book side before he goes to the Grey Heavens. He finishes Bilbo's book, and he goes to the Grey Havens. And on the way to the Grey Havens, you see a very old-looking Bilbo Baggins, still played by Ian Holmes, wonderfully played by Ian Holmes. You see them on the way to the Grey Haven, and I love the line where it's something like this. Bilbo says to Frodo, "Any chance of seeing that ring the last time?" And Frodo, you can see the effect that the ring has had on him. And he says something along the lines like, "I'm sorry, Uncle, I seem to have lost it. I think I lost it." It's, and it's that moment. It's just perfect. That's all you needed in that scene. And then Bilbo goes, "Oh, pity." And then the end of the Grey Havens, and it's very moving and touching when you see all the hobbits say goodbye to Frodo. There isn't really a reason as to why Frodo goes to the Grey Havens. As far as I know, there isn't a reason that Peter Jackson or any of the characters, gave for why Frodo had to go to the Grey Havens. I think it was because of the effect that the ring had on Frodo. It's why Bilbo went. I think it's why Galadriel went, because we see the effect that the One Ring had on Galadriel in the Fellowship of the Ring. And I think that's why Frodo went, because he was never quite the same hobbit. They all come back different characters. The main four hobbits, Frodo, Sam, Merry and Pippin, all come back different characters. Sam comes back more confident, Merry comes back more selfless, and Pippin comes back more brave. And Frodo comes back not the same person. He is definitely not the same person because of the effect that the One Ring had on him. I mean, look at the effect it has on me. Every time I mention the One Ring, I have to get it up, And I think that's why he goes to the Grey Havens. And then Annie Lennox into the West. comes in the end credits. What can you see on the horizon? I mean, I'm not a fan of Annie Lennox, but I like that song. In fact, I loved that song. And the way Howard Shore quotes melodies from Into the West throughout Return of the King is just, oh God, it's perfect. It really is just perfect. Also, this is an add-on. One thing I want to mention about the end credits is I love all the illustrated drawings showing the cast and crew that worked on this film. You know, when you see Elijah Wood's name in the credits, you see an illustrated drawing of Frodo. Sean Astin's name, illustrated drawing of Samwise. Ian McKellen's name, illustrated drawing of Gandalf. Almost got the name of his character then. And then when you see, you know, John Rhys Davies' name, you see an illustrated drawing of Treebeard, because he almost also voiced Treebeard, and Gimli. I love all that stuff in the end credits. It just... It really is perfect. Even the end credits of the film are part of the film, which is something you can't say about many other movies. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've been in the cinema when the end credits come up, I just want to walk out. When the end credits came up, whenever I watch Return of the King and the end credits play, I want to stay and watch them because, you know, they're just beautiful and visually engaging with them themselves. Anyway, back to the podcast and back to me rambling on about my love of Return of the King. I don't really know how to say this. I had to go through the whole film because it really is extraordinary how amazing and how much of an effect this film had on me and how it really makes the Lord of the Rings trilogy into the best trilogy of all time. At least for me. I also love that Peter Jackson, and many people might know this, and many people might not know this, Peter Jackson has 2 cameos in this film. Many people might know the first cameo he has. You know, he's one of the mercenaries on the boat who is working for Saruman that Legolas, Gimli and Aragorn face off against when they want to take the boat and go and join the Battle of Gondor, if you follow my thinking. He's one of the people on the boat, he's one of the mercenaries, but also... and I think a lot of people won't know this, I found out in the special features the other day, he is Samwise's hand when you see the shot of Sam with his sword about to face off against Shelob. You don't see Sam's face in that shot, you just see Sam walk into the frame with the sword, with his sword, which is starting to light up, and you see Shelob getting ready to face him. And that shot, we just see Samwise's hand with the sword, that's Peter Jackson's hand. Love that. Love that little addition, that Peter Jackson was one of the hobbits, you know, in this film, and you can actually get a toy figure of Peter Jackson as a hobbit, which I really, really love. Yeah. The film is amazing. There's no wonder that this trilogy caught so many people emotionally and really affect their lives. I mean, still today people are talking about Lord of the Rings films. I'm still talking about them because they are timeless. They're timeless classics, and Return of the King made them timeless classics. Return of the King wasn't any good, they wouldn't be timeless classics, but it delivers on everything you wanted it to, and it is probably the best fantasy film of all time. Empire Strikes Back is still my second favourite film of all time, and I still prefer it over this, but objectively, although that doesn't really make sense, I'm still going to say it anyway, objectively, Return of the King is probably the best fantasy film of all time. I mean, the whole trilogy is like... it's one trilogy to rule them all, you know what I mean? It's one trilogy to rule them all. And I was watching the behind-the-scenes special features stuff on the extended edition DVDs, and they were talking about the premiere of Return of the King, and, you know, going into all these different premieres around the world, and at the premiere in Wellington, at the world premiere of Return of the King, pardon me, they were talking about how they were treated like the Beatles and treated like the astronauts who were going on Apollo 11, you know. They were being treated like heroes whilst they were going on cars on the way to the premieres. They were going on the red carpet. There were people hanging off of buildings in Wellington, New Zealand, who wanted to see the cast and crew that were behind this film. And then when some of the cast members went to Denmark for the Denmark premiere of Return of the King, apparently before the film played, people who volunteered to do this reenacted the first 2 Lord of the Rings films on stage, this huge team of people, a huge Lord of the Rings fans, reenacted the first 2 films on stage before Return of the King premiered there. And I'm watching this thinking, there's no other franchise which is really like that. I mean, yes, Star Wars, but take Star Wars out of the equation a sec. No other franchise is really like that, where, even Star Wars for that matter, where, you know, it's managed to capture the heart and the spirit and the joy of people's lives within 2 films, and then you watch Return of the King within 3 films. You know, the fact that all these people in Denmark were at the Denmark premiere were reenacting the first 2 films before watching the 3rd film. And they were doing it all for free as well. When you watch these special features, they weren't doing it for any money. They all volunteered to do this. Shows people, just tells you how much these films mean to people. And they mean so much to me. They really they really hold a special place in my heart. I mean, there aren't films like this. There aren't films like Return of the King or The Two Towers or Fellowship of the Ring. And even so, I love the Hobbit movies. They don't hold a candle to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, really. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is something which I don't think will ever be matched in cinematic history. I don't think anything will come close to it ever again. I mean, it's amazing what these films did. And of course, I have to mention what is in the extended edition. So for people who don't know about it, for people who want to watch the original edition of the film, do yourself a favour, check out the extended edition. Yes, it's like 4 hours and 23 minutes, but take away the 23 minutes because 20 of those minutes are the people on who are included in the funding through the OneRing.net in the credits. So take out 20 minutes. It's round about 4 hours long. In the extended edition of Return of the King, you get Saruman's death. Already spoken about that. Love that scene. There's a drinking celebration after Helm's Deep, which apparently wasn't in the original cut, although it shows how these characters celebrate after winning the battle. It just shows a different side to these characters too. It shows a different side to them after what they've all been through in Two Towers, and I love that. Eowyn's dream about a dark future with Sauron's reign, which I do think is important and adds some more suspense to the film. Will these characters win in taking down Sauron? I mean, on a rewatch we know they do, but I like that scene quite a lot. Pippin wearing Faramir's armour, I think it's a nice addition. Merry motivating Eowyn in the way to the battle. The dead agreeing to fight alongside Aragorn. There's a moment in the extended edition where the King of the Dead says to Aragorn, "We fight." Ooh, it gives me chills now just thinking about it. The dead, yeah, I've already said that one. Gandalf facing off against the Witch King, already spoken about that. Love that scene. Eowyn healing and meeting Faramir, which I do think is a very important scene and adds to their romance in the film, which isn't really touched on as far as I'm aware in the original cut. Frodo and Sam almost being caught by the Orcs when they're almost at Mount Doom. They're in Orc armor and they're almost caught by the Orcs, and it gives more suspense to what's going on there and it makes more sense. Then again, this close to Mordor, and the fact that it's not in the original cut doesn't really make sense to me because they're getting that close to Mount Doom now. You know, they're getting that close to destroying the ring, and they're in this orc armor. And in the original cut, they're not run into by orcs. It makes sense that this would happen, especially as the orcs are marching towards the Black Gate to fight Gimli, to fight Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, Gandalf the White, Merry, and Pippin, and all that, and all those people, and the armies of Gondor. The fact that these orcs run into Frodo and Sam adds something to the film, you know. I really like that scene. The fact that it's not the original cut astounds me. Also, I think that's it actually. That is... Oh, the mouth of Sauron! How did I forget that? The mouth of Sauron. I'm looking at my notes and thinking, I put down the mouth of Sauron here. What am I talking about? No, the mouth of Sauron. One of the best moments in the film when you see this character, this slimy character come up and he talks to Aragorn, Gandalf, Merry, Pippin, Legolas and Gimli just before they fight at the Black Gate, and he God, he's got teeth that you won't forget anytime soon. If you've seen the extended edition, you know exactly what character we're talking about. One of the best characters, one of those characters, maybe not one of the best characters actually, take that back, but one of the most memorable looking characters, should I say, from Return of the King. In the extended edition, love the whole stuff with the mouth of Sauron. And just realised one thing I forgot to mention is with the Battle of the Black Gate, when Aragorn says, for Frodo. And they all go, for Frodo! And Merry and Pippin run ahead in front of all the armies of Gondor to fight the Orcs, even though they are outnumbered. Oh god, the whole bit for Frodo. You want to stand up and cheer and shout for Frodo alongside those characters because of how much these films grab you. They give me goosebumps now thinking about them. I'm not even watching the films and they give me goosebumps, you know? That's how powerful these scenes are. Every scene in Return of the King, every frame even, feels like it's been carefully created. Feels like it's had this passion, love and care and time put into it. Right, so this is an add-on. You can tell because I'm not wearing the One Ring anymore because I just took it to my brother's bedroom, but I forgot to mention this. There's a bunch of unreleased footage. I did touch on this in my review. I'm not sure if I have already. I haven't because I literally just finished recording the review and forgot to mention this. So yeah, there's a bunch of unreleased footage from the Lord of the Rings trilogy that somebody has composed of, or the evidence of, online on one YouTube video that lasts something like an hour and 16 minutes. That's how long it lasts. And in that video that someone did online, there is evidence that originally in the battle of the Black Gate towards the end of this film, Aragorn was meant to face off against Sauron. Sauron, like we see him in the prologue of Fellowship of the Ring, was meant to come back, and Aragorn was meant to face off against him. Although I don't feel it was needed. I don't feel it's needed at all. In fact, it feels a little video game-ish when you think about it. Although I don't feel it was needed, I would have liked to see it though. I would have liked to see a cut where that was included. And again, maybe we'll get that cut in like 5 years or 10 years time on the 30th anniversary of Return of the King, you know. Maybe we'll get to see something like that. Maybe we'll get to see that cut included, even if it's just on the special features, because it is shown in the special features, them filming that scene. It's shown in the behind the scenes on Return of the King. They were filming Aragorn's fight with Sauron. But it's not in the final cut. It's not even in the extended edition either. And although I'm not sure if it would have worked, I still would have liked to have seen it. You know? I still would have liked to have seen that. And also, I would have liked to have seen Faramir and Eowyn's wedding, which they did film. You know, there's even evidence on that YouTube video again. There's a YouTube video which, God knows how long they took to make it. It's a remarkable YouTube video showing all of this lost footage from all three Lord of the Rings films that wasn't included in any of the cuts of the films and wasn't included in the special features. There is evidence that they filmed the wedding between Faramir and Eowyn, but we never got to see it. We never get to see it in any of the cuts, and I would have liked seeing that. You know, it's just things like that where I'm not necessarily saying they were needed, but it might have added something to the film, and I would have liked to have seen a cut where they were included. Anyway, back to the podcast and back to me rambling on for over an hour about this masterpiece, because I forgot to use that word in this podcast, but it really is a masterpiece. Return of the King is a masterpiece for the ages. It's a timeless classic. Back to me talking about it. And even though I do have one nitpick with this film, in fact I've got two little nitpicks, I will admit, I've got two little nitpicks. With Two Towers, I had a nitpick like where did they get the horses from at the end of the Battle of Helm's Deep. In Return of the King, where do the horses go when they ride up to the Black Gate? You see Aragorn, Gandalf, Legolas, Gimli, Merry and Pippin all ride up to the Black Gate, and you're like, okay, they've all got horses. Makes sense. Then when they charge up to the Black Gate with the armies of Gondor and Rohan, with the remaining armies of people willing to fight at the Black Gate, at the Battle of the Black Gate, they don't ride up on horses. It's like the horses just run away. It's only a little moment. And the fact that it doesn't really bother me shows you how much I love this film, but it's just something I wanted to mention. And my other nitpick is in the extended edition, when you see Eowyn healing and when you see Faramir healing, there's this song that plays in the background where it's something like, "In the light of day, da, 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 da." I didn't like the music choice. I love how Choice scores for these films. I don't think that piece of music works. So it's not him. Well, it is his music, but it's more the singing. If there wasn't any singing in that scene when we see Eowyn healing, I wouldn't care as much. But the singing, I always feel is a little like, do we need to do this? And I just realised I've got a bit of light shining on me one sec. And the singing always makes me think, do we need to do this? We need to have this here? I don't hate it. It's just a little nitpick I have with that scene. And it's only in the extended edition, so many people might not even know what I'm talking about. All the extended editions to this film, I think, are all needed. You know, they all have purpose to the plot. They're not just extended, like I said before, in my review of Two Towers and Fellowship of the Ring. They're not just in there for the sake of being in there because people like these films. All the extended stuff adds relevance and adds to the richer story and adds to Return the King. Adds to, I can't speak anymore. Adds to Return the King being a far richer experience. And of course, we've got to talk about the fact that, and I did touch on it a bit earlier in this podcast, the fact that this film won 11 Oscars. It won all the Oscars that it was nominated for, which I don't think has happened in cinema history ever. I was about to say, since Return the King won all 11 Oscars. I don't think it's happened. I don't think it happened before. I mean, I might be wrong then. Do correct me if I'm wrong. But the fact that a fantasy film, because that hadn't happened in cinema before, again, as far as I'm aware, Star Wars didn't win any Oscars. At least it didn't win any Oscars like Best Picture, like Return the King did. The fact that a fantasy film won 11 Oscars, and one of them was Best Picture, and one of them was Best Adapted Screenplay, and another one was Best Directing. I mean, they deserved them all, but the fact that it won them all shows you as well that these films didn't just grab the hearts of audiences and fans. They grabbed the hearts of the critics too, which is a difficult thing to do. It feels like nowadays critics are so divided on films sometimes, especially big spectacle films. I think maybe Return the King is a reason for that, because Return the King showed you how to do substance and spectacle and make it all work and make it all come together in simply in perfection. Yeah, it is just perfect, this film. And the extended edition, you know, it's the definitive edition. It just is. And the CGI still holds up. The visual effects are still astonishing to look at, and it's a bittersweet film. It really is, you know, especially with that ending. And I mean, I just love it. I really love it. I really, really love this film because you really feel all the passion and care and thought and time that has gone into making all three films. You feel that a lot in Return the King. Return the King is his own beast. Fellowship of the Ring is a quest film. Two Towers I see as a war film. Return the King I see as the greatest finale in cinema history. I mean, it really... I was rewatching and thinking, man alive, there is nothing quite like this, is there? There's nothing quite like this, and I don't think there ever will be. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, I adore it to pieces, if you hadn't grasped that already. So it's about time to give a rating, and I'm going to say that The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, I'm going to say it's an 11 out of 10. You know, if I could give it an 11 out of 10, I would do. You know, it's a 10 out of 10. You know what I mean? This film is... I mean, I know I've got some nitpicks with it, but it's not a thing I'll change about it. Even the nitpicks are kind of like now. I just laugh about them, you know? There's not a single thing I'd change about it, because it is really the accumulation of everything that was amazing about the first two films, and the perfection of the first two films perfectly captured in this film. I've just gone on and on about it because I love it so much, and I really grew to love these films. And I did speak about this bit in my review of Fellowship of the Ring, but I'm going to speak about it here just as I'm rounding up my review of Return the King. I really grew to love these films when I watched them in the cinema for the first time last year. I'd seen Two Towers in the cinema before last year, but I saw them all in the cinema in an all-nighter, one after another. We had a half an hour break, or maybe not even half an hour, it's more like 20-minute break between each film. And it was all the extended editions too, which added to the experience, which is why I always say extended editions are better, because I've seen them all in the cinema now. And sign on here, another reason the extended editions are better is because when the Lord of the Rings films get shown in the cinema nowadays, it's always the extended editions. It's never the original cuts. As far as I'm aware, whenever I see Lord of the Rings shown at my local cinema, or one of my local cinemas, it's always the extended editions, and there's a reason for that. But going back onto what I was saying, I saw all these three films back to back with some short breaks between each film, all three films, extended editions of all three films in the cinema together, and it really did add to the experience and add to my love of these films. And we started Return of the King about 4 a.m. in the morning, and it finished about 9 a.m. in the morning, something like that. Maybe we started at 5 a.m. in the morning even, I don't know. But the point is, we started it very early in the morning. I was very tired and very emotional because of being up all night watching Fellowship of the Ring and Two Towers, and I didn't sleep but the thing is though, I didn't sleep in Return of the King. I didn't sleep in Return of the King. I was enthralled by it. I was engaged by it. I was emotionally engaged by it from start to finish. And at 5 a.m. in the morning, when all you're thinking about before the film starts is your bed, because you haven't been to bed that night, I hadn't been asleep at all. When a film can still make you... when a film can still engage you that much, when you're that tired and emotional, is saying a lot. I'm not sure how much it made sense there, but you got the point. I've been rambling on way too long in this podcast today. I've been going on for over an hour. I did not think I would do, but there we go. I've been going on for over an hour this film podcast because I just wanted to talk about how much I loved it. I love talking about things I love on this channel. I really do. I don't like talking about things I don't like. And that's why I'm talking about these films, because I love them. Love to pieces. And I love Return of the King. I love the Return of the King because it is an emotionally engaging finale that is so satisfying and makes the Lord of the Rings trilogy the one trilogy to rule them all. Return of the King is a perfect finale to the perfect trilogy, and I love everything about it. And so, all in all, as I've already said, and I'm going to say once more, the Lord of the Rings Return of the King is simply one of the best films of all time. And that is why, you know what, I'm going to do it. That is why I'm going to give this film an 11 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, that is it for today's podcast. Yes, we finally got to the end of my Lord of the Rings film reviews. But don't worry, I'll have my Hobbit film reviews probably coming within the next couple of weeks or so. So look out for my reviews of all 3 Hobbit movies coming soon enough on this channel. But hopefully you enjoyed this podcast on the Return of the King. Hopefully you watched even just a little bit of it, or listened to a little bit of it. And if you did, please let me know your thoughts on the Lord of the Rings Return of the King. Maybe you think it's the weakest in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Maybe you think it's the best in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Personally, I don't have favourites. I think of the Lord of the Rings trilogy as one entity. When I think about them in my top 10 favourite films of all time, I think about them one entity. So, I don't have favourites in this trilogy. But maybe you think Return of the King is better than the others, or maybe you think it's worse. Whatever your thoughts are on the Lord of the Rings Return of the King, please let me know in the comments section below. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. I look forward to many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. As I already said, thank you as always for watching or listening, and yeah, we got there in the end. I will see you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.